Well, welcome to What Matters Water, TV, and Podcast. We are diving deep into how we can squeeze every last drop of use out of our water resources. I'm Charlie Wilson, your host, and today we're exploring direct potable reuse, or DPR, California's groundbreaking solution to water scarcity. Picture with me, if you would, a world where wastewater transformed into drinking water like a fairy tale glass slipper. California's water regulator is leading the charge towards a future where purified water becomes clean, delicious drinking water for all. But people have questions about how it's going to work and where we're going to get some answers today. To unravel the nuances of DPR, we've gathered a panel of experts. Tony Estremera, a board member from Valley Water, will shed light on the Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center, a pioneering facility in Northern California. Also joining us is Dave Peterson, overseeing operations at Las Virgenes Municipal Water District and serving as president of Water Reuse California. And Dawn Taffler, who is a recycled water specialist at Kennedy Jinks, bringing extensive expertise in planning, engineering, and demystifying the complexities of water reuse. From advanced purified water to public education, we're going to delve into cutting-edge technology and regulations ensuring the safety of reclaimed water. It's a tale of scarcity, science, and human ingenuity. So stay tuned as we dive into the depths of direct potable reuse. This is not your average water cooler chat. Welcome to the future of hydration, What Matters Water, TV, and Podcast. Well, welcome everybody back to What Matters Water, TV, and Podcast. And I want to formally say thanks to Dave, Dawn, and Tony for being with us today. But I want to open our conversation, Dave. I mean, you get the lead in this one as the president of California Water Reuse, so you get the first question. But kind of just frame it for us, right? Explain what is, the fancy words of direct potable reuse. What does it entail, and why is it important to water sustainability for California?
Thanks, Charlie. It's definitely something I'm passionate about. And, to put it in simple terms, direct potable reuse is really about purifying what was once wastewater such that it's suitable for drinking, to use as a drinking water source. And you might say, well, we're already doing that. What is new is the direct part of that, direct potable reuse. And really the direct part refers to the fact that we are at a point in time now where we can advance treat that water so that it can be placed directly into a potable water system or into the raw water supplies that are used for a potable water system. And that's really what is new about it in California with regulations that were adopted at the end of last year. It's important and significant for California for a couple of reasons. One is we're experiencing the impacts of climate change really on a scale and at a pace that we had not anticipated. And, this recently passed drought is, a good reminder of that. And the fact that we cannot count on our imported water sources to be there in the volumes that we normally and historically have seen year in and year out. And so the name of the game is really diversifying our water supply and having drought resilient supplies. And that is what water recycling is all about, is developing a local and drought resilient supply. And so I would say it's more important than ever now, and that DPR really provides us with an avenue to accomplish that, where you may not have a reservoir or a groundwater basin where that water could normally be parked temporarily and qualify in what would be called an indirect potable reuse situation.
Well, and that's kind of what I sort of took away in my understanding was based upon your, it's a lot of fancy words, right? We do a lot of engineering, there's a lot of science, there's a lot of concern that some may have. And so, terminology does become important when you're talking within the water community. But if I was just coming to the table, as I understand it, right, you've got conditions that every water agency's got something a little different, right? If I have lakes or streams or things that I could, and it's really the basic concept of recycling. It's any no different than aluminum cans, bottles, other things. We're taking the water supply, or you're taking the water supply as it's delivered, produced, and to homeowners or to residents and businesses. But it's really then capturing what comes out of those businesses and homes again and putting it back into productive use through treatment processes. Is that about how? Do I have that right?
Yeah, it's exactly right. And here at Las Virgenes, we've kind of adopted a tagline of bringing water full circle. It's in my backdrop. I've got to move this way to show it. And that's what it's all about. It's just recognizing the value of water, and that water is more valuable than to be used just once. And that's what water recycling allows us to do. When you look at advanced purification, what we're really talking about is the most rigorous treatment that our water goes through, where we have a combination of physical and chemical treatment processes that really purify the water to nearly the water molecule itself. And so the water that's produced out of these treatment systems is the best quality water in our systems.
Well, I mean, that's a really kind of good jumping off point. So, Tony, I know that, in all of this debate, as we sort of followed at the state level, I mean, it's really about the regulations, and the concern really was safety and cost. Those become kind of the most significant considerations for whether it's this water reuse or whether it's any water project, quite frankly. Um, Tell me though, how does the water recycling, how does direct potable reuse, how do you see it with your perspective, both at reuse and at Valley Water? How does those aspects, how do they kind of stack up? And do you see where there's a cost or really true cost benefit? And can we really afford, I mean, obviously we have to meet those safety requirements. The public, that's absolutely job number one. But does that then create a scenario where we can do that cost effectively, and you put that in the hands of decision makers like yourself?
Well, it really depends on the districts. For instance, we're blessed with a multiplicity of and a huge diversity of sources. We're a groundwater agency, we're a federal contractor, we're a state contractor, so we have different costs of water. And when we put that together with recycle, we're still able to lower our costs. So it depends on the district. It depends on the sources of water that are available to that district. For us, like I say, it's the diversity of the costs that we have that we're able to keep the costs down. You're right that it's very expensive to process this and to recycle. However, in the long run, because it's locally controlled, when we get into a drought, for instance, we got to pay a lot more for water no matter what, wherever we get it, if we can. So having a local supply and being able to control that local supply is much, much more important than anything else you can do. That's why all of us that look at this will always try our best to invest in recycle. It's always worth it in the end.
Well, I think that becomes part of the magic here, right?
Yes.
We, as you described with your portfolio, Mother Nature is probably the best technology we're ever going to get. And the traditional methods of nature, of snowfall, running through rivers, streams into, captured, treated, and delivered to homes and businesses. So I got to then ask Dawn, I mean, this is kind of where the engineers really get at it, where you guys are expertise in the technology. And so compare the technology of maybe a traditional water treatment, sort of how we do that, with what this new advanced purification model looks like. How complex is that? And then how do we then kind of get back to the issues that Tony had with doing this as cost effectively as possible as part of that portfolio?
Yeah. Well, I think it starts at the general perception, that water entering your drinking water treatment plant has never been used before. It's straight from the environment. When in truth, most water supplies do have unplanned potable reuse, which occurs upstream of wherever that drinking water treatment plant takes that water from. Conventional drinking water treatment methods are pretty straightforward. There's coagulation, which is a fun name just to say we're adding chemicals so all the particles stick together and sink, and that makes the water clean. You have filtration that essentially is like a fine sieve that removes the dirt, sand, impurities. It makes the water clear. And then finally, you have disinfection, and that kills the germs, making it safe to drink. So now you move to direct potable reuse. It does all that and more. The source water is derived from wastewater, so we have a longer way to go to make that water considered drinkable. So the requirements are more stringent, especially the ones that Dave referred to that just came out in California. So it starts with physical absorption. It's kind of like the Brita activated carbon most of us have at our homes, but adds biodegradation. So then there's bugs that are involved in that first process, breaking down the organics further. There's multiple forms of disinfection at the start and the end. There's ozone, like a very powerful germ zapper, ultraviolet light, which is an intense spotlight to further target germs and bacteria. And then we throw in a little hydrogen peroxide. That's an oxidizer, but we kind of think of that as a bleaching agent. Not much can survive that, but that's just the start and the end. Then we have the meat in the middle, which is the more intense water filtration, using micro and ultra filtration membranes and also reverse osmosis. So these are much higher precious membranes. They remove smaller and smaller particles. In terms of reverse osmosis, the same technology for desalination, that removes most dissolved particles as well as most contaminants. So really letting the pure molecules through. So non-technically, I call this the belt, suspenders, and a whole lot of duct tape approach. It is there as a multi-step process to keep that water very clean. And I think there should be a lot of trust in that. In terms of the cost, it comes at a price. The infrastructure, the energy, the chemicals, the labor, all of that is expensive. I do a lot of planning work throughout the state of California. And as Tony just said, each agency really looks at this by their own water supply. And some, like Valley Water, are fortunate to have a lot of different diverse supplies. Some are very isolated and may only have surface water or groundwater, may not have imported water, or the imported water they have may have restrictions, especially during drought. So as you're looking at all these pieces together, you at a minimum are going to meet these regulatory requirements and the treatments required to provide that safe, healthy supply. But you do have to balance it with the cost of your other treated water sources and your other, and to think about what those sources may be available when there's climate variability, because we all know that the cost of having no water is going to be way higher than any potable water supply, even through purified water treatment.
So, well, Dave, that kind of leads me to the next question of so what of them, because we're talking a lot about the need for belts and suspenders and technology, and I mean, there's a lot that Don just described that goes into, I'll call it the production of highly treated wastewater and recycled water. What, from your perspective, and I'm kind of open to all of you actually, is what are your kind of the common misunderstandings as you talk to the public, as you've read some of the news stories, as you've engaged with regulatory agencies? Is there any kind of theme or anything specific that you've sort of picked up along the way that says, hey, you know what? This is what people sort of may think it is, and this is what it really is and where it fits into our portfolio?
Well, I can't help but to think that the most common misperception involves the yuck factor and the fact that there are still people that believe what we're talking about is toilet to tap. And we saw that even in some of the newspaper articles. And, there's nothing probably further from the truth. What we are talking about is some of the most highly treated water in our system. And Don mentioned, a lot of our source water is already under the influence of treated wastewater that was discharged to our rivers and our creeks and our streams, upstream. And so what we're still facing is that public perception that this water is somehow inferior because of its history, because of what it has experienced. And we kind of have a phrase, not to judge water by its history, because all of the water has been circulating on this earth for centuries, right? And we haven't gone back centuries and thought about what happened to that water. So yes, it was once wastewater, but it's really wastewater to recycled water to a purification process that cleans the water to a point where we can all feel safe drinking it, and not just safe for ourselves, but safe for our families. And, I think about, Don used the word trust. And to me, trust is really what we're in the business of as a public water agency, and ensuring that our customers not only trust us, but trust the work that we're doing for their families. And I trust it entirely. My family drinks and will drink advanced treated wastewater, and I feel very comfortable about that. I actually encourage it. So I think that's key. And then ensuring safety, and then transparency. So we need to be transparent about it. We should not be ashamed of the fact that this was once wastewater. We should be proud of it, and that we are reusing a resource that in the past we had discharged to the ocean and did not make use of.
Well, Tony yeah, go ahead.
I do believe that it's important to share with the community exactly the processes that we use. When we first built our purification center, we spent a lot of time talking to the community beforehand, and also preparing to be able to educate folks. And of course, our purification center includes facilities where we're able to bring in community groups and as many folks as we can to explain to them exactly how we process the water, and then to show them physically what we do. The good thing is we're blessed that in our community in Silicon Valley, people believe in science. And so once you show exactly what the process is, we have focus groups beforehand where everyone was turned off to it. But then once they saw the process, once we explained it, actually showed them, this is what we do each step. At the end, when we asked them, they all said, yeah, we don't mind drinking that. Oh, that kind of water we'll drink. That one that's at the end of the process, we'll drink that. And so that's what's important, is to make sure we share with the community exactly what it is that we're doing. And secondly, I always said from the beginning of our processes, hey, we got to have folks with white coats get out and talk to the community too, not just engineers, not just public officials, but we got to have the health community involved. And so we got together with the American Medical Association locally in our county to work with them and their environmental subcommittee, who helped us to review the processes. And then actually, they actually put out a newsletter, which was a small booklet that supported the process, explained it all. And so we have tremendous support from the health community. And that, again, makes a big difference, because people are looking for who they can trust the most. So we're trying to use every part of the community that we can to talk to the rest of us so that they kind of get it. And that's what's most important. And especially to use the vernacular as often as we can so that folks get it, because not all of them are engineers and understand the processes, no chemical engineers, no physicists. So it's important for us to explain to them in ordinary language what it is that we're doing, and actually show them. We have a lot of people coming to our center to look at the process and feel it and drink the water too.
Well, it strikes me, Tony, as sort of what you're describing, this technology and the protection of health that we're going through for water reuse. Dawn, this isn't that much different than what you deal with contaminants across the board in public water systems, whether it's emerging contaminants, if it's natural contaminants, if it's all that. We seem to have a lot more fear injected into the municipal or public space that we're constantly then having to sort of counteract and talk about. I mean, you guys see a lot of this with the different types of treatments, and everybody seems to be like throwing something over the fence. Hey, how about this? Hey, how about this? How do you see then this technological approach and what you described to go through for the high treatment of water reuse, comparing that to, say, some of these emerging contaminants, and then bringing, as Tony described, restoring or at least staying in front of the public trust that the public water systems actually they're doing the job as designed and what they're paying for?
I mean, in truth, it's a tricky issue. We know that direct potable reuse treatment train with RO, reverse osmosis, is very good at removing more than 99.99 and a bunch of decimal places of the contaminants in water. And that includes a lot of the nasty chemicals like pesticides and herbicides and industrial pollutants that we know about. It includes PFAS. RO is the best way to remove PFAS. There are other options as well, but it is very clear that gets it out of the water supply. But we also know there are some emerging contaminants that we may not even know about that we can detect, but we're not really sure what that means. Look, I'm an engineer, I'm a planner, I'm a mom. I want to save the environment. It has to be economically feasible. We all believe it's going to be critical to protect public health. We need regulatory limits that are based on the best available science to do that. And we have to fight for water equity, which means that communities have to have access to safe, clean, and affordable drinking water. So just because we can identify it, maybe we can't remove it, maybe we don't need to, or to a certain level. I think that we have to believe in our technologies. These processes that I talked about earlier, they're sophisticated, but they're not new. Those are tried and true. They have the reputation of being able to do what they need to do. And I think we're just going to continue to do that. And we're going to improve our technologies and efficiencies, and we're going to monitor, and we're going to be very protective because we have the trust and the transparency that agencies like Las Virgenes and Valley Water have built over time.
Well, and that's a great sort of next step. And I mean, because you guys, did you take the white coats with you when you were articulating the opportunity and what the regulations ought to look like with the state water board? Because I can also clearly see, those people sitting on the dais with a very heavy burden of the public saying, hey, you better make sure these folks get this thing right, because we can't afford to mess this up, as far as I can see. I mean, you can even not even once, right? So what did they look for? What was kind of how did you see sort of the regulatory and legal challenges in getting the regulations adopted at an appropriate level at the state board? And then do you see kind of on the back end, are there legal challenges? Are there places where we have to make sure that we're performing as designed, so that we don't have a hiccup and it then creates some kind of a legal liability?
I haven't really seen it from the legal standpoint a real issue, but during the regulatory process, and we mentioned white coats, there were a lot of white coats involved. And kudos, by the way, to Valley Water. I think throughout in all of the state, Valley Water has done the most exceptional job in engaging the medical community. In fact, a model that many of us are going to follow. But during the regulatory process, there was what was called an independent expert panel that was engaged by the water board. And that panel included professionals and experts from all different fields: epidemiology, toxicology, public health. And they independently looked at the criteria for direct potable reuse to ensure that it would be protective of public health. And so there was a very rigorous review process. The other thing is research. There was a tremendous amount of research that went into developing these regulations. And Water Reuse California and many of its members were a part of developing and funding that research in partnership with the water board. And when I think about emerging contaminants, the same applies for the future. We need to continue to invest in research. We need to be always looking at what is the next sort of contaminant of concern. We know about PFAS. What is the next PFAS? I don't know. We don't know, but we need to be investing to prepare for that, and then to understand it and to ensure that we are adequately and continuing to adequately protect our public. So it is never ending. This will continue forever.
So you mean you're looking for a system that, like Dawn described, that really gets that 99.9% on the first pass, so that you don't have to add some new gizmo to the system as you go along the way to create some figure eight in the next iteration of whoever's got something new in the system?
I hope so. And there's a whole lot more nines, by the way, too, after that decimal point. So there's a lot of nines here. And I'll just say these regulations are conservative, and they should be, because we are dealing with a very real need to protect public health. So the regulations that drive our water systems for direct potable reuse are some of the toughest to meet of all of our regulations, but they are regulations that are a catalyst for helping us to provide a path forward on building these projects. And, you know, interestingly, a lot of times in the water business, regulations are a challenge for us to do our job. In this case, the regulations are the opposite. They're actually a catalyst, and they're a pathway for us to do our job. Because absent regulations and criteria on how to build these systems, everyone would be doing their own and doing it their own way. And the public would not really have confidence to know that, you know, one water company versus another had done all of the due diligence that's needed. Now, with a uniform standard that's statewide and is probably the toughest in the world, the public can be confident if you met these standards, which you must, that you have employed all of the best technology to make sure that the water is safe.
You know, again, we have to share with the public exactly what it is that you're saying. After all, we also have to show them the difference between the drinking water that they love to buy at the store, the process that they go through with those things. They be so absolutely thunderstruck by the process we go through to purify our water, to clean our water before we serve it, and how much concern we have and the investments that we make for safety and to show the purity of water. Whereas, you know, what do these other folks do? They put it through a little filter and then serve it by water, and then charge them 10 to 100 times as much as our water costs. So I think it's important for us to share that with folks. And, you know, they're generally thunderstruck when we show them what it is that we're doing, all of the costs for us for a single liter of water, and then what they paid for, and then what they're getting. They're really surprised. They don't understand. They don't realize the kinds of regulations that we have to deal with and meet. And yet the other water supply at cost, this bottled water industry, have no regs at all, practically. And when you compare those, I think then they understand that, yeah, they should be trusting us because we earn it.
Well, Tony, there's an adage that I use frequently. Dave and Don are probably sick of hearing it when they hear me talk about some of these things, but I like to say to folks that, you know, for better or for worse, it happens in California first. And Dave, you described really this is the sort of the first or sort of the toughest in the world.
Yes.
And so Tony, why is California first, or is California really first in this? Are there lessons that we've learned from other states, from other parts of the world, or is this something really that California, coming out of Silicon Valley, is a trend leader in creating this new water resource?
Well, you know, I think we're a trend leader because of our reality. You know, we're in an arid climate, practically in the desert. And so we learn from elsewhere where they've had the same conditions, and they've come up with some great ideas, as Israel and the Middle East and other places. But we also are now dealing with climate change and a lot of challenges. And so we have to progress. We always have to look forward because of the situation that we're in. You know, we've got 40 million people, and soon, despite some that might be moving out of town and out of the state, we're still going to have a lot of people in the future. And so we've got to meet their needs. And so we've got to stay ahead of the pack. We've got to do what we can, and we know that this is a supply of water. Like I say, that is locally controlled and it's available. It's the only other. You know, I remember we'd go to Congress now and then to visit them, and they would always say, "Well, can't you make up water? Yeah, can't you find new water? You know, new water? What are you talking about? This is the new water. This is what it is. Other than that, you know, unless we can pipe it down from Canada or elsewhere, this is what we've got. So we've got to stay ahead of the pack, and that's California is always thinking that way, especially
Dave,
Silicon Valley."
Yeah. So Dave, does this mean that recycled and highly treated water reuse is this the silver bullet? Is this the thing that solves our future water resiliency issues, or is this still something that's a piece, a small piece, a medium-sized piece, large piece of a portfolio that we're still going to need kind of that all the above as we go forward?
Yeah, I think that started as a trick question, Charlie. But no, it's not. There's no silver bullet. I've come to that conclusion a long time ago. But it is a really important part of the solution. And we at Las Virgenes and Water Reuse believe it's a critical part of our water future in California. It is not the only solution. We need to invest in other areas, and we are. And it needs to be a portfolio, and so diversifying your water supply so that you are not so reliant on a single source. My agency is challenged in that way, in that we uniquely have no local water. And so we're 100% reliant on imported water for our drinking water. And so this is our best strategy to invest in a drought resilient supply. But, there's a lot of other strategies that can complement it well. And, whether it be stormwater capture, desalination, both groundwater, brackish water, and seawater, it's not the only thing. But for those communities that do have wastewater and recycled water that's not being fully utilized, this is really an important step forward. It has really important also environmental co-benefits. And so you'll see across the state, a lot of the projects are also aiming at reducing discharges of their treated water to the receiving waters, whether it be like an inland water body or a creek, a stream, or directly to the ocean. And we've seen in our legislature a couple times a bill come up that scared us all, that had to do with, banning ocean discharges. And, we sort of freaked out. But our future is likely to involve us tapping nearly all of our treated water. We will still have treatment residuals, brine, that we need to dispose of, and that will not disappear. But I do think in California, eventually we are going to be at the point where we're going to be tapping our treated wastewater to essentially the fullest extent. And it's really just a matter of time.
Dawn, I'm going to come back to you with one of those science questions again, because you talked about a little bit the emerging contaminant issues, contaminants in and the purification that goes here. But we also hear, again, generically throughout the entirety of the water sector, the new stuff, pharmaceuticals, microplastics, kind of it's part of that, maybe that new list of things. Can you tell me a little bit how you design for that? Does the treatment process that you described, does that take care of those issues as well? Or are there still sort of new things on the horizon we need to consider when we get to big project delivery?
I think the treatment train that California has set forth to be required for direct potable reuse takes care, as Dave said, 99.9999 and decimals beyond of those pieces. The microplastics, those will be removed. A lot of the pharmaceuticals, a lot of the constituents, they are taken care of there. And I think as we put these systems into practice, we're going to be monitoring to build that trust that we are taking them out to the degree. Now, as Dave said, just because we're taking them out of the purified water doesn't mean they're disappearing from our environment. I mean, the truth is that like energy, nothing's really created nor destroyed. It changes forms. And, luckily humankind is very good at changing forms of things and reusing them. So I sort of see the technological advancements of the future in maybe resource recovery technologies and how we could address the reject water from reverse osmosis to pull out and reuse more of those waste streams. I think that's going to be very valuable for inland direct potable reuse in the future, where you don't have the vast ocean to release it to. Another thing I think is going to be really exciting to see, it's developing now, but it's only going to get better, is artificial intelligence and machine learning. Those predictive technologies are going to help us optimize our direct potable reuse systems in terms of the operation, increasing the efficiency to reduce energy or chemicals, improving decision making and reaction time. I mean, because as we've all been talking about, that trust is making sure we don't get this wrong and that we can accelerate the synthesis of this real-time monitoring and allow for a more rapid response. So we're going to get better and better at this. And as the technologies are going to improve, but I feel really confident that the technologies we have are able to take a lot of the most all of the concerns that we have off the table. So I think doing these other tweaks, turning the dials, are going to help us get better and better at the stuff that we don't yet know is coming down. And the independent advisory panels and the research are all key parts of that process, continuing to check what we're doing.
This may be why they don't let me be on boards and commissions anymore, because what I'm hearing I got white coats, I've got regulations, I got artificial intelligence, I got systems, I got, belts and suspenders. And I have absolutely made sure the public knows that what they're getting is purified water. And all I got running in my head was, well, why don't we have some kind of partnership with a vodka manufacturer so we can inject some vodka into that system as well? Can't that help you with both the taste and the disinfection?
I like the way you're thinking, Charlie. What's kind of interesting about that is, there has been a whole growth of pure water beer, and brewing beer. And, we kind of joke about it a little bit, but, and I never thought in my career that I would actually be involved in brewing beer as part of my work. But it has been a really interesting way to connect with people, is that they can go and enjoy, a beer at a social event that was sourced from treated wastewater. And I'll tell you, I have had no complaints about our pure beer.
Well, again, we take serious subject matter here. We have a good time with it, but in part of comedy, right, is a real question, because while we focus on water delivered to homes, families, children, etc., there is also that water supply that goes to manufacturing, that goes to business, that goes to industry, that is really the propellant for the jobs, for the incomes that allow people to afford the lifestyle that we have in California. And I remember some very clear examples with beer manufacturers with what they do with their recycled water from their plants. Lots of folks, as you described, right? We've just gone through a heavy discussion here about there's water use and then there's water reuse. And all water can be reused and put to productive use. That's part of that natural cycle we're sort of helping to close by this conversation. Depending upon its end product and the purification needs, it's really at that point, I'll call it designer water, right? You can design for whatever the end use needs to be, and to be absolutely sure that what you're getting is the best quality and protects public health to the highest possible degree. Is that, am I kind of close there?
I think you just did, Charlie. That was just about perfect.
Just about perfect. See, I'm 99.999. I'm not quite there, but I'm working on it, David. I'm working on it. So, okay. So tell me then, as we sort of look ahead, we've got regulations, hard fought regulations, lots of time and energy and research and things that went into that. As we look ahead, since we don't have any massive big projects we can point to yet in California, say that's what this is going to do. One, are there smaller projects that we can point to and say, hey, this is what we're trying to model on a larger scale? Or, are there hurdles, or are there things coming that we need to make sure that we prove out so that everybody truly gets what we think we've got, which is a pretty good mousetrap to provide this kind of a resource?
Well, I'll start and just say, I think for more than a decade, we've been working on setting the framework to get this done, the research, the regulations, and even starting to work on the funding that's needed to build these projects. I think really we are at an inflection point now where we need to get it done. We need to actually build these projects. They're big projects. There's a combination of big and small, but we have in California some of the biggest projects in the world proposed, and we need to go and do it now. The challenge is two things: time. It takes time and effort, a great deal of time and effort to get these projects done, and the cost. And we're in an inflationary period right now, and we're feeling pressure on the cost of water and maintaining affordable water rates. And so it's really a time of implementation, in my mind, implementing these projects, executing on the plans, but continuing to be mindful of the importance of maintaining public health and doing it right, and doing it carefully and safely, and with trust and transparency.
Tony, how do you see that affordability piece? I mean, you opened the discussion today talking about the portfolio that Valley Water is blessed to have,
Yes.
But you're the guy that sits on the dais and you're the one who's going to answer to voters said, hey, I made this decision because was it good, bad, or indifferent? How do you go through that evaluation and the multiple funding sources, I think, that need to really come to be brought to bear? Because I don't think we can do this all off of rates, can we?
Well, that's absolutely true. It's once again, it depends on what your variety of sources are. But it's really important for us to look everywhere. We spend a lot of time going to Washington D.C. looking for funding. We go to Sacramento all the time, and it's really important. The purification center that we have now got some of the first investments from the Reinvestment Act of 2008. And so we were able to build the plant that we have. And right now, we're in the middle of negotiations with the city of San Jose to build a 1 MGD purification plant next to the one that we have now, so that we can go through all of the testing that we need to do for direct potable. So it's going to take us a number of years. As David mentioned, it takes time to go through this. We got to make sure that we go through all the different processes to show that the new all of the new regulations are effective, that we can meet them, that they themselves are effective, and they may require changes after we actually produce water and go through actually processing that water and then producing that water, and then go through that. We have a panel of experts, top experts in the field that always help us. And so it's a big process, and it'll take a long time. It'll cost a lot. But in the end, I always say it's not, once you look at one side, what it costs, you also got to look at the other side, which is, what does it cost if you don't do this? And so it's important to always measure that and do it in a public way so that the community is always with you on that.
Well, as you describe it, having spent an awful lot of time in the electric utility business, yeah, there was nothing more sobering than rotating outages and no service to be able to get the public's attention.
Exactly.
And I think there are some lessons we probably can learn from our utility brethren here. So, Dawn, do you see the hurdles in front of us? Are those hurdles like a sprinter that you can just step over? Are they hurdles that we need a pole to pole vault over? Or are we going to need, something a bit more, mechanical to get up, get some flight?
I think it's turning into this one water mantra. And I think if we can help everyone to see, look, we only have one amount of supply of water on this planet that's drinkable. We need to look at it in a way that makes the best use of the resource. And though direct potable reuse hasn't been happening in California, we've been doing indirect use of purified water for decades. I mean, early 1970s with the groundwater replenishment system. Most recently in Northern California, Pure Water Monterey brought in not only wastewater, but food industry wash water, ag water, urban stormwater, and combined them. And that was driven by discharge compliance, mandatory cutbacks, and a need for a resilient water supply. We all want Monterey strawberries to continue to sit on our plates. So you have these multiple drivers, and if you think in a much more holistic way, I think that's, with all the things Tony said and all the things David said, that's all going to help us to get over each of those hurdles. And we can learn from the experience of these tried and true projects with trusted technologies, with the advancement that we're making, with public communication, education, and research along the way. I think we have all the pieces. We have all the building blocks. We're no longer working in a bubble. It's no longer one agency works here, another there. Potable reuse is bringing together the wastewater agencies, the potable water, the water distributors, the private distributors, the private agencies that want to be forward thinking, like the Silicon Valley technology, mammoths. And when you get all those people saying, hey, we all think this is the way to go, let's work together, make it happen, I'm optimistic. I think we can save the world one drop at a time. And I think potable reuse is a key component of that.
So, Tony, I'm going to close us out. They got to ask these questions of everybody when we do these shows. So I'll put you in charge. You're the guy with the magic for the day. Based on the lessons that you have learned and the processes and the decision making and where you sit at Valley Water, is there anything that you think we're just sort of absolutely have to do? What is the thing that must happen and must happen most frequently?
Well, as I keep mentioning, I think the most important thing is public acceptance. We've got to make sure that we bring the community with us. I know, we have we are very proud of the top absolute experts that we have on staff, and a great panelists that we have, experts, a panel of experts that we have, and the tremendous regulations that we finally have gotten out. But we still have to make sure that the community is with us, that they understand it, that they support it, because absent that, we're really going to be in trouble. We got to have community support. We got to have community understanding, and we got to have community acceptance. That's the biggest challenge that I see. We've got great experts. We know what we got to do. It's been done before. We can only improve on it, but we got to have the community with us all the way through.
Dave, you're the professional. You get to answer to electeds like Tony. Is that what your electeds are telling you? Get me some public acceptance, or are they just giving you the green light, said just go get it done?
No, he's right on. Tony is right on. I couldn't have said it better. I think the public acceptance, and it really goes back to the trust, to the transparency and safety. It's all about that. We are here to serve our communities, and providing safe and reliable water service is what they expect. And we need to give them the confidence that we are doing that in their best interest. And our public expects, I would say, they're more sophisticated than ever. And they want to know and understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're able to do it. And we've seen, the demo facility in my background, we've used as a tool to accomplish that. And we've seen really impressive results. People get it, they understand. And when you show them, they also will support the investments that are needed for it.
Don, you get the final word. You got two public sector guys here, one elected, one employed by the municipal water agencies. As the private sector, the woman sitting on the outside, what advice do you have for these two to get these things up and running?
I think the recognition that potable reuse is going to be one of the few new locally controlled drought-proof water supplies that's available to communities to face climate, uncertainty, climate whiplash. And it's our jobs, as the folks who are running the facilities, managing them, directing the policies of them, or doing the engineering work to help to be able to execute that. I mean, I'll go back to Dave's first statement. Water is just too valuable to use just once.
Well, Tony, Dave, and Don, thank you for being part of What Matters Water TV and Podcast and talking about this issue about recycled water and the promise that it has. Thank you. As you also know, at Southern California Water Coalition, we like to tell people, we educate to advocate. So I think by doing something like this, we hope we'll contribute in some small way to the education of the public and within the water industry itself, so that they take this very seriously. I want to thank you all for being a part of today's conversation, and we'll look forward to seeing you at one of our future events. Tony, we got to get you down and have you come. Valley Water's a proud member of the Southern California Water Coalition. Even though you're in Silicon Valley, we are happy to have those entrepreneurs and the high-tech guys come to be part of it, because we're all looking for that portfolio, if you will, about how do we get good regulations. Because if people have information, I think, as we see in this case, if they have the information that they need, they will advocate in their own self-interest, and that creates better public policy. So thank you all for being part of today's conversation, and we're going to be back in just a minute. Well, thanks for joining us on What Matters Water TV and Podcast. If you like today's discussion, go to wherever you download your podcast and give us that 5-star rating. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. That'll help us build our presence in this new world and on this format. If you're interested in helping sponsor this program, or you have suggestions for future shows or comments, please reach out to us at socalwater.org and send us a message. As we close out today's show, I leave you with this challenge. Be a part of the conversation. Be a part of the solution. At the Southern California Water Coalition, we educate to advocate. So as public policy leaders have difficult choices to make, together we help them make informed decisions. So thanks again for being with us. We will see you again next time here on What Matters Water TV and Podcast.